Well, hello, and I hope you recognised this animal here. I'm sure you did. It's, of course, a camel, and I tried to make this camel dance a little bit, and if we've got time at the end, I'll show you how I did it. Now, a camel is a really, really interesting creature, and our story today features a camel, but it's really about a little boy. Well, I say a little boy, he's about 12 years old, so he's quite a big boy really. His job was to look after camels, not just any camels, but camels that belonged to three very important people. And I wonder if you can guess who they were? That's right, he looked after the camels of the three wise men who came to visit Jesus just after he'd been born. Now, Hamza had a very important job because camels had to be ready for any long journey, and his masters, the three wise men, had seen something in the sky, a very special star, and because they were so clever, they had worked out that the star was a birth star, and they believed that the star was going to lead them to a baby king, a king who was going to be born to be king of the Jews. And the clever thing about the star was that as it shone so brightly in the sky, it didn't just stay in one place, it moved. And it seemed to be moving nearer and nearer to where Jerusalem was, which was a long way from their own country. And it involved a journey of crossing deserts, which were very, very hot, very, very dry. Now, this is where Hamza had such an important role, because he had to prepare the camels for this very, very, very long journey. He had to brush them down, make sure their coat was lovely and shiny, very pale coloured coat to help reflect the hot sun. And then they had to check that the camels had plenty to eat. Now, camels are very, very clever, Hamza says, because they have very, very, very thick, strong lips and sharp teeth, which means they can crunch through thorny cactus plants which grow in the desert. And so other animals can't manage that, but because the camels have got such tough teeth and such thick lips, they can manage it. So he gave them plenty to eat. He also gave them grain and other things that they wouldn't find in the desert. And then he had to make sure that they drank. Drank how much? How much do you think they ought to drink before they went on a long, 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 long journey of several days? Well, I don't know about you, I can't drink that much in one go. Now this bottle contains 2 litres of water. It did have lemonade in it, but 2 litres of water. Now, I couldn't drink 2 litres of water. I don't expect you can. But a camel can drink not just 2 litres of water, but he could drink not just 2 bottles, not just 3 or 4 or 5, or even 10 bottles. He could drink 60 of these bottles full of water in one go. Where does it all go? Well, he can drink 120 litres of water. That's a good camel fact, isn't it? Now, Hamza says a lot of people think that it goes straight into their hump, but it doesn't go into their hump at all. It goes into their body, but their body is very clever because their body stores fat in the hump. And when the hump is full of fat, it means that when the camel is out in the desert and perhaps it's a bit hungry or getting a bit thirsty, it can draw on the fat in its hump and the body changes it to water and to food. So that's a very useful thing. Good camel fact, that one. Anyway, the other servants had to get ready all the tents and the bedding and all the clothes and the food that they'd use. But Hamza just had to worry about the camels. and soon they were ready to set off. And they decided to head towards Jerusalem, which was where the Jews lived. After all, if he was king of the Jews, surely that's where he'd be born. After several days travelling, still only with the star to guide them, they didn't know where they were going, they came to the town of Jerusalem. Very, very busy. And in Jerusalem there was a palace, and in the palace lived the king. Now his name was Herod. Now Herod didn't know anything about this new baby king that was going to be born. So when the three kings, or the three wise men, arrived at his palace, wanting to know, can you tell us where we can find the new king? Herod was secretly, didn't show it, secretly not a happy man at all. He thought to himself, a new king? What do you mean a new king? There's no need for a new king. They've got me. They don't need a new king. But he didn't say anything. He said to the wise men, oh, he said, I don't know where the new king is, but I'm sure my wise men will be able to tell me. Just take yourselves here and sit down and have some refreshment, have something to drink. You must be hot and tired after your journey, and I'll go and see what I can find out. So off he went, and when he met his courtiers and his wise men, he shouted at them. He said, what's this about a new baby king? You haven't told me anything about him. And they said, well, your Majesty, we didn't know anything about it. Well, then find out, he says. So they went through all their scrolls and all their charts, and they came across a book of the prophet Micah. Now, Micah is one of the books in the Old Testament, which is what the Jews used because they didn't have the New Testament yet. But they found in the book of Micah that the new baby was going to be born in Bethlehem. So they said to Herod, well, all we can find is that one day there's going to be a king who's going to be the Messiah, and he's going to be born in Bethlehem. So Herod went back to the three men. Now they were taking something to eat, and they'd invited their servants in as well, so that they could have some refreshment too. And Hamza, he'd looked after the camels, he'd made sure they were safely tethered, and he'd come in to have something to eat and drink. And when he saw Herod, he didn't like him. Straight away, there was something about Herod he didn't like. He was a bit scary. Hamza wasn't sure that he was a very honest man, a very truthful man. He had a feeling that Herod was pretending to be pleased about the king. And Herod put on a lovely smile, and he said to the wise men, do you know, I am so thrilled to hear that a new king is going to be born. Now, I want you to go off and find him. Go to Bethlehem, because that's where we think, according to our charts and our scrolls, we think he's going to be born in Bethlehem. So why don't you go to Bethlehem? And if you find him, will you do something for me? Will you come back and let me know? Because I'd like to worship him too. Hamza looked at him a bit suspiciously. He didn't sound as though he wanted to worship him at all. It sounded more like he wanted to do him some mischief. But of course he couldn't say anything. It was nothing to do with him. He was just a servant. So the three wise men thanked Herod very much for all the lovely food and drink, and they set off on their way. And of course eventually they arrived at Bethlehem, as we know, and they did find baby Jesus. And when they got off their camels, Hamza was told to hold on to the 3 sets of reins, and so he was lucky enough to be near enough to see baby Jesus himself. But something puzzled him. He thought, this is a king, and yet he's being born in what looks like a sort of an outhouse, a bit tacked onto a house where the animals live. That surely can't be right. Babies aren't born in places like that. And then he looked and saw where the baby was lying. And he realised that the baby was lying in the manger, the trough that was usually full of animal food, where the sheep and the donkeys and the goats would scrummage for their food. What was a baby who was born to be a king doing in such a humble place? But you know, the more Hamza looked at the little baby, the more something very weird came over him, a very strange feeling. He felt that this baby was something special. There was a sort of a glow about him, something that made Hamza feel very, very peaceful and very, very happy. And he suddenly thought to himself, is this baby is born to be king of the Jews? Why has he been shown to us? It must mean that he hasn't come only for the Jews, but he's come for everybody. And Hamza felt very special to think that this baby had come to be his king as well. And when people have those very special moments, when they suddenly understand something, we call it an epiphany. And the Sunday that we're celebrating today is actually Epiphany Sunday. It reminds us that for the wise men and for Hamza, this was a very special revelation. They had been shown something that other people hadn't been shown. Before they left, the kings provided the baby with some gifts, which again Hamza thought were very, very odd gifts to give a baby. The first thing was lots of pieces of gold. Well, now we know that gold is very, very precious, and gold is considered to be fit for a king. So it proved that the baby was a king. The second thing they brought in was something called frankincense. Again, not something a baby could have. I mean, you wouldn't let a baby play with little pieces like that, would you? But these were pieces of incense, frankincense, and this was used in the temple by the priests. They would put it in a special burner and put a little light under it, and the frankincense, the smell and the smoke would carry their prayers, they believed, right up to heaven. And so it kind of said to Hamza, well, is he going to be a priest? A king and a priest? Maybe. And then the third gift was something called myrrh. Now, myrrh was very precious. It was a very precious ointment, a bit like a medicine. Now, I've got some that I've bought. It wouldn't have been in a bottle like this. It would have been in a special container. But this myrrh also, like the frankincense, has a beautiful smell. And it was used when people were unwell or when they'd had an injury. It would be rubbed into their skin to soothe perhaps a bruise or an aches and pains and things like that. But it was also used when people died, because they lived in a very hot country, and if anybody died, they would very quickly start to smell a bit. So they would rub this myrrh into their bodies to make them smell good. And Hamza thought, so they've already given a baby the thing that you put on them when they die. Is this baby going to die? Well, he certainly hoped not. So those were the three gifts, and the three wise men were ready to move off. But they were going to go back to see Herod, which Hamza wasn't enjoying at all. But somehow they learned in a dream, perhaps it was God talking to them, perhaps the star was telling them something, someone told them, don't go back to Herod. Herod's not the nice man you think he is. He's not really wanting to worship Jesus. He is wanting to do him some harm. He doesn't want him to live, because if he lives, he might take over Herod's throne. And so the wise men set off in a completely different direction and took a long, long way home. But Hamza felt very blessed by that journey. He knew that he'd seen something very, very special. Now, I said if I'd got time I would show you how I made my camel. I've made another one and it's nearly finished. But all you need to do is when you make your camel, you make the body of the camel. Oops, his head's fallen down. He's a bit, perhaps he's having a little sleep while we talked. Now, something wrong with this camel, isn't there? He's missing some feet, isn't he? And this is how I've made the camel. I've made his legs in two pieces. So this is the bottom of his leg. And can you see his great big hoof? That's to stop him sinking into the sand. If you imagine when you're on the beach and you walk through sand, it's easy to dig in, isn't it? And so the camel has really big, wide feet so he doesn't fall in through the sand. Now, I don't know if you've got any of these, but they're called, some people call them split pins because they split in two. I don't know if you can see that. Let me hold it closer. You see, and what you do is you make a hole in the leg, and now I want to get the hoof the right way round, and then you need a hole in each piece, and you put the split pin through, and then you open it up at the back. You might need some help with this. Oops. And then you open it up like that, and you can make it as tight or as loose as you like. I want it to be quite loose because I want my camels to prance along like that. Okay, so let's do one more, and then I think we can just about show our camels dancing once again. There we go. So I can make them, untangle the string a little bit, move them back this way. We'll put some music on, and then you can watch them dance across the screen. And before I go, I want to say Happy New Year to you, because we're now in 2021, so first junior church of the new year. So a Happy New Year to you all, and God bless you all, and I really, really hope that I'm going to be able to see you all for real in 2021. Okay, so let's just jiggle these around. Got two now.